Welcome back to my shop. So, I'm working on a Dante costume, right? Well, I'm actually working on 3 Dante costumes. The teenager is doing Dante On, the original, and the animated version. Kim is doing Dante 5 from the latest Devil May Cry. And I am doing DMC Dante, the one with the dark hair, the reboot that everybody didn't like. I thought he was fun. So of course, I need his 2 guns, Ebony and Ivory. I find these, I print them, they look fantastic, right? They're supposed to have this weird filigree in them. I printed both of them up. It's a little big for my hands, and I didn't think it looked right, because the reference, it shows something a little different, but when I pulled in the character model, I'm like, no, it makes sense. The guy did a really good job, actually. So I purchased them, printed them up, and then Kim goes, you know what'd be interesting? And I went, oh, Jesus. Every time she says that, my life gets super complicated. She's usually right, but it's still complicated. So if we could fill in these filigree with some kind of a resin that's different colored, so it's still smooth, like the reference, and I'm like, yeah, that actually looked really cool. And I'm like, but sanding it, I could layer lines. There's no way I can sand this and have it, you know, because if I paint it, because one's supposed to be light, one's supposed to be dark. If I paint the dark one and then sand it, it's not going to look right. So I came up with an idea. Let me pull you in for a second, show you where we're at. So I got my big 3D printer, right? Big resin printer. Scaled it a little bit here and there, adjusted a couple of things, and came up with this, which is stunning, right? That's not the end of it. I'm going to make a mold and cast it in a darker resin. I love resin printers, but it's fragile. If you notice, the thumb or the trigger didn't print all the way, which is a good thing, because I kind of want to print individual triggers, because people are going to mess with them and they're going to break off. That's the weakest part of the gun. And if I design it to be already not there, it's going to make my life way easier in the long run. Because this is definitely a con weapon, and I want to make sure that it is con safe. And triggers tend to be the trigger for cons as to what is or is not acceptable. So I printed this thing out, and it took forever. Let me show you how long it took. So I did it in one go, and it took almost 42 hours. But I got the whole thing in one print. Unfortunately, this piece printed a little rough because of it. I mean, it'll be fine once it's all said and done. But right now it's, I'm like, So I'm going to make a mold and cast it in resin. And I know, all the 501st right now are shouting, recasting! And no, and here's why. A, I'm not selling it to anyone. I'm making 2 of them, and then I'm probably going to cut the mold up and use them for other molds. So it's not recasting, it's no different than printing them in a different material, which is kind of just what I'm doing. Step 1 is to glue everything together. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So let's glue the 2 halves together. Run a little bit of sandpaper. There's going to be a touch of a cleanup where these 2 pieces meet. Because like I said, this is a little rough. It's not that bad. We'll take care of it. And bring it in. So the large piece of aluminum here is going to eventually be a motherboard for a proton pack. But right now, it's my surface plate. It's the flattest thing I have. All I'm going to do is glue these 2 pieces to each other and these 2 pieces to each other. But real quick, right? This thing has been cured, washed, and dried. But if you look, see, it kind of looks a little wet right there. That's uncured resin. That's going to be a problem when I make my mold. So I'm gonna have to, there's a little bit right there too, which is why we're going to prime this and clear it before we make the mold. But a little bit of glue. Does not take a lot of glue, especially since this isn't going to be an active piece. And then the same thing for this one. It's going to have just a hair of touch-up right there. So I'm using a thicker glue, a thicker super glue, CA glue, it's a Gorilla Glue. but this is probably going to have a little bit of sand and a little bit of filler. That's alright. Once everything is together, I will probably run over a little bit of sandpaper just to smooth everything out. Now I'm going to leave this for like an hour. Let the glue do its thing. Everything is glued together. Alright, we are almost onto the mold. Next step is paint. Alright, this is a delicate balance of primer, sanding, and glazing putty. And I am just trying to get this one line on both sides to disappear. My neighbors are enjoying themselves. It's a holiday weekend, kind of expected. So if you hear music in the background, that's what it is. But I gotta get this mold done. Or the box for the mold done. This is super huge. Let me bring you over, show you where we're at with that. All I've done is traced the gun and then added 1/2 inch all the way around it. I want at least 1/2 inch mold. I'm gonna cut this whole thing out on the bandsaw, and then I'm gonna cut a bunch of pieces out to put in here. I'm probably gonna block in a couple of pieces here and here just to fill up the void, because that's a lot of negative space that we don't really need anything for. It's gonna be loud. I'll see you when I'm done. I got all the pieces except for the top cut out. Got a bunch of little waste pieces. Everything's falling apart. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gluing. It's hard to talk to you over there. Why don't you come over here? Come on, I'll show you what I'm doing. Got all these little blocks here, right? I want them all glued to the side piece because it's gonna hold everything in place. And I am just gonna super glue it. So I'm gonna start with this piece here. Just standard super glue. I'm using MDF because it's dimensionally stable, and I can just do this and it will work fine. Like I said, I'm only doing a couple of these. If I was gonna do a long-term mold casting, I'm gonna make the box out of something a little better, but I try to cut everything as 90 degrees as I could, but you know, sometimes things move out of square. Not much you can do about it, at least not with the equipment I have. Now we're going to start building out the rest of the bottom side. To put everything together, I'm probably just going to use foil tape all around the edges. That way it can come apart way easier than screws or anything like that. I know, foil tape seems like a weird choice, but I've yet to find anything that works as well. So right now I'm just putting it on the corners to hold everything in place. So I'm just going to go over all the corners with foil tape, and then I'll see you in a minute. You need to sit and watch me tape something. I don't want to sit and watch me tape something. I am using Sculpey clay. It's a non-sulfur based, non-drying clay that great for making molds with. So let me pull you around so you can get at least a top-down view of what I'm doing, because it's kind of hard to see. I want my clay to come up to wherever my parting line is. On this one it's going to be a natural edge of a gun. Like this line here, it's a perfect spot for a parting line because it's already got an edge on it. But I don't think I'm going to bring it up that much. We'll see. We'll see. We'll find out together. So all I'm going to do is keep working my way around the mold. Once I have a full flat layer, we'll pick it right back up. You don't need to watch me do all this. Alright, here's where we're at with the mold. Got a bunch of these little dimples. Just use a number 2 pencil. Poked a bunch of holes. Next we're going to pour a bunch of rubber over this and let it cure for about 6 hours. So I am just using the rest of what's left of these. I'd say they're about 3/4 of the way full. It should be enough. We'll find out. I use Smooth On products. For my mold making, I use Rebound 25. I have found this stuff to be relatively bulletproof. I've had very, very few problems, and all the problems I have had have been my fault. It's got a pot life of like 25 minutes, but it takes hours. So I'm not in a super huge hurry here. A lot of people will degas, pulls all the bubbles out. I feel if you pour in a thin enough stream, there's nowhere for the bubbles to be. But you know, I could be wrong. I don't often have bubbles in my molds. So I'm going to assume what I'm doing is kind of working. This is an even part A and B. A little close is close. Yeah, mix everything up. You've noticed the mold is on an angle. I'm going to slowly stream in, probably I'd say 3/4, and maybe 1/4, we'll see. But there are lots of bubbles, right? The minute I do such a thin stream, no chance for the bubbles to survive. They pop on their own. I'm just going to start in one corner and pour. And let it flow on its own. I'm not as fond of these. They're very hard to pour from. Do these one at a time. Oh, slow. There's no easy way to pour these buckets. These not into these little cups. It's designed for way more casting than I'm doing. And I'm sure there's an easy way to pour this stuff, and it's an easy way to, you know. Just because I don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I'm going to dump most of this into this big container. But I'm not going to do a very good job scraping. It's intentional. Same thing with this one. If I just leave these cups as they are, they're horrible to clean. But if I mix everything from this cup into this cup, A into B, and end up everything from B into A, it should catalyze enough they'll be real easy to clean up. I am not a professional, just a well-versed amateur. So take just about everything I say with a grain of salt. Okay, at this point, the bulk of the gun's been covered. So if it has bubbles, it's not going to be bubbles on the gun. I don't care if there's bubbles in the rubber. It takes 6 hours for this to cure. And have all the bubbles it wants. That's all there is to it. Now we wait. Let everything do its thing. And see in 6 hours. Well, it'll be well over 6 hours because Friday night. Today is tomorrow. Mold has cured. I'm pretty happy. We're going to take the bottom off. Pretty simple. Just peel the tape and everything should come right apart. Should, being the imperative word here. No leaks, no spills, everything seemed to work, well, relatively flawlessly. I haven't looked at the mold yet, so we don't know. Alright, looks like we have a couple of spots where the rubber came through. Not a big deal. I'm going to peel the two sides off, just because I think it'll be easier to work on the model that way. Now it's just a process of taking the Sculpey off. There is nothing wrong with this clay. It's a little dirty, but it's still completely workable, completely usable. That's why I like this, because I can just keep using the same clay over and over again. Taking these edges off is going to make my life absolutely easier. I don't like that. We may have problems. The resin still seems a little gooey where it has touched the gun. If this project failed, I'm going to be a little upset. Luckily the camera's still going, so I can have the exact moment that I lose it. That's not a good sign. So I've got paint sticking to my clay. As you can imagine, that is not supposed to happen. I think at this point I'm in recovery mode. See if any of this is salvageable, or if the whole project is now screwed. Catastrophic failure. It is unrecoverable. Let me bring you in and show you what happened. Hopefully we can make this a learning experience. Alright, let's do a little forensic science and see what just happened. So the fact that the primer came off in the clay, not a good sign. But if you look here, right? See, that's all gooey. All of the detail, might as well take it all the way out, huh? Is just useless. I'm not sure if it's a reaction to the resin or if it's just something else altogether. I've made molds of this resin before and haven't had problems. I've made molds with the clear I used and the primer. I have no idea why this turned out like this. But this is unbelievably unfortunate. That sucked. I just spent the last 2 hours cleaning this thing. Scrubbing it, rinsing it, scrubbing it, rinsing it. Looks like the primer and the resin had a weird reaction with each other, which caused the top coat to do some weird things. I did everything I was supposed to. Made sure the gun was cured properly, cleaned, cured and cleaned. It was completely non-tacky. Primed it, waited for the primer to dry. Primed it again, waited for that primer to dry. Did a clear coat, dry time, clear coat, dry time. Altogether, I've been working on this project for almost a week now. It's not counting the mold. This inner part will never cure. It's just going to look like that. It was mixed well. The rest of it's fine. It had a reaction with the reaction that was going on with the top coat. Could I have done things differently? Yeah, probably. Could I have fixed it? Probably not. These things happen. It's gut-wrenching. It's horrible. That cost me probably about $200 in rubber. Not counting the resin and the time. Because this is probably useless now. My big printer, or my big resin printer, is currently in the middle of stuff. So I can't even print another one up. Even if I did, the amount of time it would take to do 2 more, there's no way. I'm done for the week. These things happen. It sucks. You know, look at that. Still got stuff all over my gloves. The worst part is I can't even cut that up and use it for pieces because I don't know if there's contamination in the rubber. So everything on this table has to be thrown out. I make molds often. Well, I've made a lot of molds. I won't say often. But I do know what I'm doing. And these things happen. And it is unfortunate and unpleasant. But they do happen. And that's kind of where we're at. All I can do is move forward. Move on. As soon as it's done printing, I'll start printing another one. And we'll pick this up at a later date. See you next time. Thought we were done. We might not be. So I spent half the day sulking, upset, and I started thinking and thinking. So I've acetoned the gun. And we are right back to, it took the paint right off, which means the primer didn't bond. And I still think that's the problem. It could have been because it was uncured resin. But you know, after having soaked the thing in acetone for a while, pretty sure there's no more uncured resin. We've gotten it back to pretty much raw. If I can do something with this mold here and salvage at least a little bit of it, I can use this as the basis for the next pour. I'll have to re-pour it, but it'll save me a bunch of time with clay. I'm not sure how well this uncured resin is just going to come off. Or uncured rubber, I mean. So we'll see what acetone does. It's been the star of the show so far. And if I can get this to, I don't know, not be gooey, doesn't have to be fully clean, it just doesn't have to leave anything on my gun. Most projects are salvageable. Just takes a couple of moments to stop and think. And had I done that in the beginning, well, I'd still be upset and I'd still be probably right about here. But I'd be right about here 2 hours ago. Instead of trying to 3D model a Guardians of the Galaxy police badge. I'm just going to keep scraping. You don't need to watch this. If we get something interesting, I'll let you know. So here's where we're at. First off, I got mad. Mad doesn't get you anywhere but in more trouble. But I've gotten the mold to, it's still slightly sticky, but I don't think it's going to affect anything we're doing. Especially since I'm coating the whole thing in petroleum jelly. Now, I'm ready. Well, the fact that it's sticky isn't that big of a deal. This stuff's going to put a nice coat on it. It's going to stop anything from doing a thing. So what I'm going to do, the petroleum jelly will put a coat over everything so I don't have to worry about weird things happening. It's like a barrier in between, right? This will save me an immense amount of time setting up more clay. And then if everything goes wrong, I'm just out the rubber. The gun, smooth, it's dry. I think part of there may have been uncured resin in the filigree. It's possible. Soaking it in acetone, there's nothing left on this thing but this thing. There's a couple of spots I want to fill in with clay, just because there's a couple of weird spots I'm not happy with. But this bottom mold is getting thrown away. Period. It's just going away. It's unusable. I'm only using it as the clay. So I'm going to coat everything a little bit of a petroleum jelly, which will act as a mold release. I'm going to put the gun in. I'm going to pour a bunch more rubber on top. Took a moment to clean it. It's probably going to take 2 of these cups each to fill this whole mold. So I'm going to do them one at a time. Go nice and easy. No reason to rush, right? We made it this far. We'll see what happens. Have I mentioned I hate these bigger containers? There's just no elegant way to pour. Now we're giving me a bad day. So this is the second half. I've already ripped the other half off. Seems like everything is molded fine. But now there's all the cleanup to do. And by cleanup I mean all this little flashing that needs to come off, which needs to come off. This is my favorite part. Just peel the rubber out. It's a relatively clean bucket. Alright, apparently it shut off at the last little bit of the pour. Here we are. Almost midnight, Saturday evening. I'm out in my garage pouring a mold. They should be ready by morning. Take 6 hours, probably come around 8 or 9. So other than that, you know, it's night-night. It's time for bye-byes. It's been a great day. Thanks a heap. See you in the morning. So I'm being optimistic. I got the rest of my mold making stuff out, because if this works, we're gonna have to pour one to, you know, clean out the mold anyway. First ones usually never come out. I have no idea if this worked or not. It should have, but you know, should have the other day too. They're at least pretty easy. Yeah. Don't know if I don't know why I'm fighting with this. Doing everything the hard way today. Well, that looks promising. The fact that the mold came apart so easy does make me a little hopeful. Oh, for the goodness. There we go. That, a little bit of a problem there. Here we go. Moment of truth. I'm seeing detail. It does indeed look like the gun cast a little bit of goo there. I don't know if that's salvageable. Honestly, I won't know until we cast one. So now I need to make a couple of decisions. So if I'm casting it this way, I'm going to need a pour spout, probably right about here. And then I'm going to need 2 vent holes here and here. Problem is, my vent holes may be above my sprue. Huh? Cut a couple vents and find out. So you don't need a lot of room for resin to flow in. But that's just a little too low. So I need to make that much larger. But I'm going to make it conical shape so it flows inward. And I want to cast it fully on its edge. So to do that, I need to put this, the 2 far ends, the long ones, and then the front one. The rest I don't really need because it's thick enough. I'm not worried about it. I could probably just hold it in place and do it too, but the easier it is for me to do this, the easier it is for me to do this. Smooth On, Smooth Cast 300. So yeah, only resin I really use because I like it. Just like the other stuff, I think I'm going to need over a full cup's worth. So I'm just going to pour a cup's worth and take it from there. I've got a bunch of Tuscan pieces I need to cast. Alright, so now everything's going to move fast. Oh my goodness. I decided to clamp it. I was just going to tape it, but no, I decided to clamp it. Clamps are much safer because it's got to stay like that for about 20 minutes and I don't want everything leaking out. I like pouring the B in first because it's more viscous and takes a little longer to drain out. This may be enough, maybe too much. I don't know, it's first time casting and we'll find out. I do not have a pressure pot. Even if I did, I don't know if this thing would fit in one of them. It's huge. I found if you mix till it goes semi-clear, it's usually all you need. Nice thin stream. Here's hoping. I don't think it came out. A lot of it leaked down here. The reason I'm recording this, I don't even know I'm recording it. So I'm mad. Some projects are just way more work than others, right? This is one of those projects. Yeah, we didn't even get... that may be castable. I stop messing with it, reclose everything, it may be castable. As soon as I take everything apart, I'll be able to dissect it and figure out where the problem was. But for now, I'll just keep pouring. And I see it leaking from here, huh? Seems to be dead center. It's probably not enough to close up. It's all over everything. Well, it's the mold. That's the problem here. I need to cut one that fits a little more exact. That way I can put even pressure all the way around. And I don't have to worry about leaks. Because the leak is right here, dead center. I can't get to that because I made a box. The problem is absolutely user error, by the way. I'm making mistakes. And once you start making a couple of mistakes, everything else just kind of compounds. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Next thing you know, you're watching your mold just pour out. I fully believe you should always take a project to fruition. Finish it. Go to the end. That way you can find out all the other problems that happen along the way. I would have never known about this leaking had I not kept going once this part of the mold was less than stellar. I have resin coming out the top here, which I kind of knew I would. I got resin right there. Well, it's as good as it's going to get. Got one side off. Camera day, the big reveal. Hey, so I have to do a little bit of cleanup there. Looks like the mold did something weird here, but that's not the end of the world. Again, this is just the first pull. It's primarily just to clean out the mold. There we go. This side, a little bit of the rubber. Still did that weird thing, but in the best possible place. Everything back together. Alright, I'm going to clean this up a little bit and see you in a minute. Oh my goodness, was this a roller coaster of a ride. Here's what I got from the mold. As a prop, I can grind everything smooth and then Dremel in the details. The things I want to do with it, there's no way I can get there from here. The mold, salvageable. So if you look, the mold kind of popped out here. And then it did all there. This is where the bulk of it leaked out. And then all along the bottom as well. So the whole front end kind of just went like that. No way to see because I had weird things everywhere. Cutting out the exact shape and then clamping it individually, I'll be able to fine tune it so it's perfect. I don't think this problem is due to the mold. I think it was because of the box I tried to put the mold in. Not a big deal. Had I stopped at any point in time, I wouldn't have found that out. The first mold being all messed up, I learned a lot of interesting things about this, right? Like, if you want to properly clean all this, acetone does a really good job. I didn't know that. I think all of my resin parts from now on are going to be cleaned in acetone. Especially, well, when I'm making a mold. A prop piece is just a prop piece. But, absolutely going to be cleaned in acetone because everywhere I cleaned with acetone came out perfect. Like I said, I've got a little bit here on the bottom and a little bit in the barrel that's still being kind of weird, and then just a touch in the trigger. I could clean this part up. I'm not gonna. This was just to clean out the mold and get everything ready. This has been a roller coaster of a ride, though. Oh my goodness. Just highs and lows, highs and lows. They're not normally like this. Most of them tend to move a little smoother. Just a little, but you know, still. If you want to see where we're going from here, you know, maybe think about subscribing. Stick around. Hope to see you next time.